There's a good time coming, you can feel it in the air. We can all go riding anywhere. Just mad about e-bikes. MeloYelo.
Hi, I'm Bill Jones. I'm a MeloYelo associate, and today we're just going to run through fitting a bike to a customer using this nice new red Townie. So what we're thinking about for the customer when we're fitting a bike to them is to make them comfortable on the bike, and also importantly to make them safe so they can get on and off the bike easily and they can use the brakes and stop safely and easily. So the first major component we can adjust on the bike is the seat. So obviously there's the seat height up and down, and then the seat's also adjustable forwards and backwards and in rotation, so to get it up or down like that. For the lady we've just tried on this, I've put the seat fairly well back on its treble because she's a fairly tall lady. For shorter people you'd start with it a little bit forwards or in the middle, and then once they've had a little pedal on it we can talk to them about whether they feel they're reaching too far for the handlebars or the handlebars feel a bit close to them. We can adjust it, fine tune it backwards and forwards to what they feel comfortable with. So starting with the seat height, which is usually the right place to start, get the customer on the bike with their heel on the pedal. The leg should be just about straight. That's the ideal position. It means that you get developing the most power from your legs. But we find with a lot of our customers, a lot of our older customers or people who haven't had a lot of recent experience on a bike, they quite often feel they like the seat a little bit lower, just because it makes them feel more stable, it makes it easier to balance and get on and off the bike. So in that situation I'd suggest start off with a bit lower, and you can show them that as they get more comfortable on their bike, a bit more experience on their bike, they might like to try putting it up a little bit, and that'll give them a bit more efficiency in their pedaling. Lastly, with the seat, once the customer's comfortable with the position forward and aft, then we just ask them whether they feel that the seat's too high at the back or too high at the front, or whether they're sitting nice and centrally on it, and adjust the tilt to suit. So if they feel that the seat's too high at the back, and customers are quite different with this. Generally you'd think you want it quite level, but some people do prefer it to have it tilted back a bit or tilted forward a bit. And then finally, the last thing we do is just make sure the seat's straight forward and aft on the bike, so it's not sitting out to one side at the front. And then we can lock that one off, and that's our seat adjustment done for now. So once we've got the seat in the right place, the next thing is to get the handlebars in the right position. And this is very much dependent on the customer, and it's quite often something you'll have to spend a little bit of time with them, making an adjustment, moving the handlebars up, rotating them one way or another until the customer's happy with where they've got them. One thing that can be critical with this is the position of the grips. Once you get the sort of handlebar height in the right place, it's worth spending some time with the customer, showing them they can rotate the grips also, just to make that final little bit of comfort on the handlebars. An important thing to do too when you are adjusting them, make an adjustment, and before you get the customer to test it again, make sure everything's tightened up really tight and safe again. Give them a little ride, have a talk to them if they want them a bit higher or a bit rotated one way or another. Make the adjustment, make sure everything's really tight again, give them another little ride, and just work through it with the customer until they're comfortable. So the next critical thing, once we've got the handlebars and everything in the right place, is to make sure the brake levers are in a comfortable position. And this is a very important from a safety point of view on the bike as well. So we can rotate the brake levers on the handlebars like this. Generally the accepted position is that your arm's straight down through the brake levers like this. Some people with shorter arms or smaller hands prefer them a little bit higher. And a little bit higher can be safer too, because when you're going downhill, your hand has got a firm grip on the handlebar, whereas if they're too low, there's a tendency for your hand to roll over and you go over the handlebars a lot easier. So generally straight, or for people with smaller hands a little bit higher, or people feel comfortable with them a little bit higher, that's perfectly acceptable. But it's very important not to get them too low from a safety point of view. So that's the position of the brake levers. So once we've got the brake lever right on the right hand side, we've also got the gear levers which can move independently to the brake. And once again, people with a smaller hand will like them a little bit closer. People like me with big hands, we might like to shift them further away so it's sitting nice and comfortably on the end of our thumb like that. So on the left hand side, we adjust the brake lever the same as we did for the right hand side, but we've also got the controls for the electrics on this side of the bike, the throttle and your power level buttons. What I prefer to do is rotate the throttle down a little bit out of the way, so there's no tendency for people to bump the throttle when they're going for these buttons, and leave these buttons a little bit more rotated up on the handlebar. A lot of this is customer preference too. I've even had customers that have asked me to take the throttle off. They don't want it, they don't think it's safe, so that's an easy enough thing to do. Once everything else is set on the handlebars, the final thing I do is position the screen so that it's in a comfortable place so that the customer can read it nice and easily and see everything that's on there. So this bike, final thing about handlebars, this bike's one of our townies which comes with this moustache style handlebar. Some customers prefer not to have quite that steep an angle on the handlebars, so we do have two other options. We have this semi-sweep handlebar, which is a nice sort of in-between level, and they come now standard on they'll come standard on the next set of transit bikes. And then there's the more flat mountain bike style handlebar which comes on the Roams and the Ascents, which is more of a traditional straight mountain biking style. So we do have spares of both of these styles, so if the customer wants a change, that's another option we can offer. A final option we can offer our customers is we've got two versions of a suspension seat post. So this is the cheaper version, which gives a little bit of spring. The important thing to remember about this is if you've got a really short rider, it does reduce how far you can put the seat down. So you need to, the rider needs to be able to ride with the seat at least this height to be able to use one of these seat posts. And the same, we've got the more expensive Suntour version. These are a really nice suspended seat post. A lot of customers really like them. Again, you've got the issue where you can't get the seat down quite as far as you could with the standard straight seat post. But they're a lovely comfort option for a lot of customers. That concludes our rundown on fitting the bike to the customer. But another good idea is when you do your follow-up service check, your first service check, is to follow up with the customer and see how they're finding the bike. If it's still comfortable for them, they may, once they've ridden a few kilometres on it, decide they want it opened out a little bit, or they want the seat height a little bit lower or higher. So it's worth following up with them. There's a few little symptoms you can ask them about. If they find they're getting a little bit of an ache in their lower back, sometimes you can solve that by raising the handlebars. If they're getting pins and needles in their arms when they do a long ride, you can sometimes fix that by adjusting the angle on the grips, or once again putting the handlebars up a little bit higher. So it's well worth doing a follow-up with your customer at that stage once they've got comfortable on the bike and they've had a chance to sort of find any little things like that might not be quite working for them.
There's a good time coming, you can feel it in the air.